Hello, today we're going to be talking about 5 tips to instantly improve your student short film. This might also apply to you if you're a low-budget amateur filmmaker, just doing things independently, but I'm going to aim this at students because these are 5 things that I would have liked to have heard when I was a student that might have helped give me an edge when I was making my short films back in the day, stop me from making some simple mistakes, and just a few simple tips and tricks to help improve your short film as a whole, particularly if you're in your first and second year and still kind of getting to grips with things. I'm going to try and aim these at the 5 key roles that you kind of have as a student group. So you've got your writer, director, producer, cinematographer, editor, and sound recordist. So each of these will kind of address at least one of those roles, but it's good to look at all of them as a whole as well so that you can work together effectively as a group, and you might end up multi-rolling on certain projects as well. So it's always good to know how other roles function and how they can be improved upon. So without further ado, let's get into the list. So tip number 1 is for the directors and the writers out there. Perhaps you're writing and directing at the same time, and that is, for the love of God, don't make the short film about you. And by that I mean, don't make it about a student. I mean, it's subjective, but the amount of times a short film will start with an alarm clock going off in the dormitory bedroom and the student rolling over, turning it off, oh no, they're late to a class or whatever. We've seen it all 1,000 times. It's not interesting, it's not new, it's not exciting, and it is kind of just a way for you, maybe without realizing it, to project part of your own subconscious into this short film that you're making, because obviously you've just moved to university. So it's understandable that you want to maybe project and vent a few things, but try not to make it about that. Try to keep it off campus. Try not to use a student main character. It just takes people out of the film. Lecturers have seen it so many times and it's just not interesting anymore, so if it ever was. So try and do something that's a little more outside of your comfort zone and push yourself as a writer, as a director, to explore deeper themes and different narratives that you might not otherwise have wanted to approach initially. Just try and push yourself. Everyone at university can relate to being a student, but that doesn't mean you should just exclusively make your short film about a university campus or about a student or anything like that. Even if it's a completely fictional narrative, you're still going to project parts of yourself into that main character, and the lecturer will probably just see through it, and it's not very original. So yeah, push yourself wherever you can in that field. Tip number 2 is for the producers, and it basically boils down to not being afraid to dream a little bigger. A lot of producers limit themselves to, oh, I'm a student, so therefore the only locations we can use are dormitories and flats that our friends are renting currently. We can only use, student actors. It's not the case. When you're a student, you've actually got pretty much free reign to do what you want. Because you're a student, you can kind of use it as a get out of jail free card. A lot of people will help you, often very cheap, sometimes for free. I'm not saying that they should, but they will. Just because you're a student, they understand that you're making your way and they just want to help you out. A lot of locations will be very understanding about that. A lot of places will give you student discounts for renting certain things, hiring certain things out. Actors will probably give you cheaper rates because they understand the situation that you're in. So don't be afraid to go out there, especially network on Facebook groups and social media groups. Get involved in certain actor groups online and try and see if you can get a few people on board. Then you've got extras, you've got adult actors, you've got people with experience getting involved, and your film overall will be better and look more impressive as a result. It will look a lot more professional. So yeah, don't be afraid to dream big. Don't just keep it within the confines of the student world. Try and get out there, network, and bring on some outside help. Tip number 3 is aimed towards the cinematographers, and basically just want to say, don't be too precious about what it is that you're using. A lot of cinematographers just want to stick to this one way of working. Oh, I've got this camera, I know how this works, I want to shoot this way. But try to be a bit more open-minded, try and make sure you've got the right tools for the job. A lot of lower-end cameras don't handle the dark very well, and as a result you see a lot of student films that are quite grainy, quite noisy, a bit ugly to look at. You can't really see what's going on, and you can't really grade that stuff either, so it's very hard to make that sort of thing look pretty. So try and make sure that you've got the right camera for the job, one that can handle low light, especially if you're not confident yet with lighting scenes properly. It's fine, it's a learning process. You're a student, you're learning how to do these things, you're not expected to be perfect at it straight away. But just try and give yourself a bit of an edge and make sure that the equipment you use can handle those lower lighting conditions well. Make sure you run tests where you can. Make sure, if possible, that you have a location recce. Ask your producer to sort one out for you. Make sure you have time to do a location recce, to do some tests. Make yourself some lighting floor plans. Don't just expect to show up on the day and know exactly how it's all going to work and it's all going to work out fine. You'll save a lot of time. You won't waste other people's time. Do some tests, do the preparation, show up on set and know what you're doing. Tip number 4 is for the sound recordists and is all about reducing the noise in the background of whatever it is that you record. A lot of student short films have a horrible background hiss to all of their shots, and yeah, you don't want that. So I would first say make sure that you record an ambient track. Again, not all new sound recordists will think to do this. It's basically where you just get everyone in the room that you're filming in to be quiet, and you just film 1 to 2 minutes of just silence, and you'll just get this ambient noise of the room that you're filming within. And then you can take that track and put that underneath the whole scene, so that as you're moving between shots where the noise might change slightly, you've got a bed of ambient noise to kind of tie it all together. It'll stop the cuts between shots from being quite so jarring, because the audio won't be jumping from one ambient sound to another. Obviously, you'll need to make sure that you get a fresh ambient track for every new location that you're shooting within. But make sure that you do that, because it will help smoothen out that background noise. Another thing to do is to look into how to reduce noise in post-production. If you've got access to the Adobe suite, you might use Audition to do this. It's a very simple process to do it on a basic level, and even though you might not reduce all of the noise and it might not be perfect, you can definitely bring it down and lower how noticeable it is. It's literally just a case of capturing a noise print and applying it to a larger audio file, and then rinse and repeat. It's really not a difficult process, and if you've got access to something like Audition, you should be able to do it fairly quickly. So try and make sure you do that. Also, if you're outside, make sure that you've got something to cover your microphone. Obviously, ideally, you want to have something like a dead cat to stop that wind noise, because wind, again, it's very common in student films. If you're filming outside, you must have access to a dead cat or some kind of fluffy sock, something that's going to block out the wind noise at least a little bit, because yeah, filming outside without one of those is definitely a no-go. Tip number 5 is for the editors, and all I want to say for that is basically, you're not alone. You don't need to do this by yourself. Editing is not necessarily a lonely task. A lot of students make editing a very lonely job. They go and take it upon themselves to get all the footage, get all the files, and do everything themselves from scratch, all the way from starting the edit through to the end. And the rest of the crew wouldn't even see the film after they'd shot it until it was finished and delivered to the lecturer and screened in front of everyone. And the director would be sat there going, what the heck, this is not what I imagined. That kind of thing. Don't do that. It's a collaborative process. You as the editor need to work with various members of the crew to make sure you get certain aspects right. And it's always useful to have other people on hand as well for, you know, another set of eyes, fresh opinions, other takes on things. You need the director there to help choose the right takes for the actors, help you get the pacing and the tone right. You need the sound recordist there so that you can work on the sound design together. And you need the cinematographer there so you can work on getting the look, work on getting the grade looking right and getting it the way that they expected it to look when they shot it. So don't do it alone. A lot of editors think it's this lonely task. It's only as lonely as you make it. So make sure you're working with other people and you'll have a stronger film as a result. So those were the 5 tips I had for all of the key roles that you're probably going to find within a student group or within a low budget filmmaker amateur group. Hopefully it was useful for a few of you out there, and if it was useful, leave a like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. And yeah, leave a comment and suggest other topics that you'd like me to cover in the future. But yeah, thank you again for watching, and we will see you again in the next one. Fluffy sock.